Michaela shoots and scores. Plus, Wes and Bananas play producer in the field. A fantastic daily challenge. Tyler and Alyssa finally make out. The Secret Garden is losing trust, and TJ once again is here to turn the whole game on its head. It's the Challenge USA 2 episode number 7 recap coming up right now. What up, my fellow challenge lovers? Welcome to the Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge, past, present, or future. If it's happening in the Challenge universe, then we are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated Challenge historian, Jacob Hollabaugh. Thank you so very, very much for being here with me today. A couple days late, as said it would be, so right on time, but a couple days after our regularly scheduled episode, back from the quick trip to Vegas, back from Challenge Mania here in Chicago yesterday, and back on the microphone to cover episode 7 of the Challenge USA 2. I somehow managed to avoid spoilers and still get to watch it fresh, not knowing what happened. A good episode, I would say a touch down from how high I feel like we've been for a few episodes in a row now, but still a very good episode, and loved the star role that Michaela took in it. We're going to talk a lot about her. We're going to talk about the whole episode. Quickly, before we do programming reminders, this week's recap. We are now, unfortunately, here talking on a Sunday. We have no challenge episode tonight. I had gotten used to it after 3 weeks, but no challenge tonight. We'll be back on Thursday with episode 8, and we will be back recapping it late Thursday night into Friday morning. So that episode for this coming week, episode 8, will be out late Thursday night after the episode airs. And it should be for the rest of the season, be able to meet that time in that deadline and be able to get you those right away after the episode. For the time being, for the next few weeks, it is only going to be the one podcast a week while we close out USA 2. When we get to Survivor premiering here right at the end of USA 2, we will be covering Survivor. We will talk more about that and full announcement for it probably next week sometime. And then as USA 2 goes out, I'm guessing, and it seems like from reading the tea leaves and the right accounts online, we are getting Challenge 39 this calendar year. Whether there's going to be a decent break between USA 2 and 39 is yet to be seen. I would imagine there's going to probably be at least a month, if not maybe a little bit more, but we are going to get that. So once we know a little bit more about that, we'll know how long of an off season we have to fill, and we'll plan accordingly. So more updates coming on that. But for now, the next couple of weeks, just USA 2 once a week covering that. And today on the pod, obviously, covering episode 7, same as usual, episode walkthrough, awards, power rankings, predictions. But real quick, before that, I do have to say another big shout out, as always, to Scott and Derek, all of the team at Challenge Mania, all of the fans that come out to every Challenge Mania. I was fortunate enough to get back just in the nick of time yesterday morning to rush over and get to Zany's in Rosemont outside of Chicago here for Challenge Mania Chicago 5. It was a fantastic time, as it always is, and I made sure to rush back for one reason and one reason only. As much as the cast they brought was a pretty incredible lineup. We had Olivia, we had Derek and Derek C, and we had Ryan, and we had Darrell, and we had Brad, but we also had Tyler Duckworth, and that was the main reason. As much as I wanted to meet or re-meet everyone else, as much as I wanted to see all the Challenge Maniacs out there, I really had to get back to see, as I told him, my second favorite challenger of all time. Timmy Beggy, number 1, Tyler Duckworth, number 2, and then there's a big drop-off. I don't even know who I would put number 3 definitively, but those two are my two definitively favorite challengers of all time. I adore Tyler. I love Tyler. I was so excited to meet him. And flying out in the 6 o'clock hour from Vegas was well worth it to get to spend 2-3 minutes with Tyler in the meet and greet line and get to hear him and everyone else on stage. It was a wonderful time. Challenge Mania, always a good time. If they come to your city or a city near you, definitely recommend going. Definitely. If you're going to go, you got to get the meet and greet, in my opinion. I know it costs a bit more, whatever, but the show is good, but you can listen to it after the fact on the pod. You know, it's really all about the meet and greet greet. And unfortunately, had a ticket, but didn't have the time to make it back out for the brunch today. So hopefully everyone that was at that had a fantastic time. But shout out to Tyler. Unbelievable to finally get to meet him and hear a little bit more about him. And just, he's the best, absolute best. So that was wonderful. That's my very brief and not all that interesting Challenge Mania recap. So now that that's out of the way, we'll get to USA 2. We're going to try my best to make this a little quicker. I know we're a few days out from the next episode. And so, this is coming later. We'll make the thoughts as consolidated as possible, but we're going to get to them all. So again, episode walkthrough, awards, power rankings, predictions. Here we go. Challenge USA 2, episode 7. Thanks as always for being here. Kicking off the episode, we start with the house segment, and there's really two things to discuss here. The first one is the opening of the show. They get back, and Wes, after his, offline controversial win in the challenge house, and interestingly enough, also after the week that Wes and Wes-related topic matter had on social media, which I should probably comment on that. I'll comment on that at the end of this podcast here. We'll save it for the end during the power rankings and predictions segment to not derail us immediately at the start of this, although it was definitely the biggest thing going on in the world of the challenge in the last week. But incredible timing coming off of everything that was happening on social media to then open this episode with Wes giving this speech to the entire house of I just want to be treated fairly. I want everyone to actually give me a shot to earn or lose their trust versus just not having any of it. It's a very, it's yet another interesting moment in this kind of interesting, compelling storyline of Wes just being I just really am dealing with the emotions of never being here again, and I just want everyone to kind of be nice to me back to you. And I actually do play honest, which to his credit, people can cite plenty of things early on, but he has now for quite a number of seasons in a row. And, obviously he and the Bananas of the world have done a lot of seasons. So there's time for change throughout all of that. But he has played a pretty straightforward and honest game for a pretty long time now, even if that was not always how he did it. And so I get it. And it's hilarious that it seemed like that speech meant to be to his former green team or maybe to his new blue team, but it turns into the entire house standing there listening to it. So love that. And shout out to Alyssa, who we can now just say Alyssa because we're a few episodes removed from the other Alyssa leaving. So Alyssa S, you're upgraded to just Alyssa. Congrats on that. But also shout out because I don't know if anyone else would have this reaction, but it would be very easy for them to do so. Wes has a speech, and then we get Fessy saying oh, this is all bullshit. Don't believe any of this. that man's a threat, whatever. And then after Alyssa, you get Corey on the other side saying the same thing, being no, we're not falling for this, whatever, but sandwiched between Fessy and Corey being cool speech, but we're not buying it. They get Alyssa in confessional to be it makes me I forget what she says. She might say it's endearing, or she does the quote unquote fell for it clip. And this is one of those moments where you have to remember the producers are asking them questions in confessionals. Sometimes they're repeating questions over and over until they get someone to say the thing they're looking for to make the clip, which in this case, to be able to make the perfect, here's a vet who doesn't buy it, here's a rookie who buys it, here's a vet who doesn't buy it, and make that little sandwich. So shout out to Alyssa, because whether she, is portrayed in this moment oh, I got to help Wes. Wes is so great. I fell for, she fell for it, quote unquote, when that might not be true at all, but they convinced her to say what they needed her to say in the confessional. And so shout out to her for playing along and giving them that. Second thing from this first segment, Michaela and Wes. Super icy conversation between them. Again, Wes with the little sitting, hunched shoulders, tight legs, kind of talking quietly, lower his head, just the most kind of sullen, downtrodden, I'm trying to get the little sympathy out of you. I want to make sure that this is viewed. She's up walking around Wes. I believe that he's thinking through all of this of exactly how this is viewed. He's shot his own reality television shows and things at this point. He's been a part of 25 to 30 seasons worth of reality television. He knows, he understands. He's not just with his words, but with his actions and everything, setting this up to look a certain way, be able to be edited a certain way, portrayed a certain way. So he's just like the innocent, like, Michaela, I don't understand why we couldn't be friends, why we can't work together, this, that, and the other. It's super icy. I continue to love the interactions between these two. And from Michaela's point of view, I totally understand why she would have a distrust of him, why she would have a distrust of all of the MTV vets, and really all of the vets, like throwing in a Michelle, a Fessy, a Josh, Paulie, all the others that were kind of the in-betweens. I totally get that. And I understand why she's just like from the start been like, nope, not having anything to do with any of you, keeping you at arm's length. You know, Wes is on my team now. Sure, I hope he helps us win dailies, but then otherwise, arm's length. You stay over there. You just kind of help us, and then, you know, kind of be our little secret spy that doesn't really have any power. I totally get it. But I do think, with the hindsight of us watching now, but even honestly, in the moment, I feel like it could have been sense to realize that she's missing a chance for an incredibly strong alliance and kind of pseudo like partner in this game. I feel like Wes was ready at many points in the last few weeks while they have been on a team together to actually submit that, like, hey, like, you have just as much power in this house right now as I do, and you're good at this, and I now see you as a threat in this game on every level, politically, socially, competitively, athletically. And I feel like there was a moment where the second John A went home, Wes would be looking for, he always wants to have a number one male and a number one female in every house. He isn't someone who just wants a number one. He wants a number one on both sides of the women and the men of the house. Janae was that for sure in this house. And I feel like if you're able to read through that, or if you watched the other season, you knew, I would assume most in the house knew, like, Wes and Janae, however obvious it was or wasn't, if they tried to hide it or not, the people would know that. But the moment she leaves, he's looking for a number one female to have his back, to have hers, to work together, to help each other get to a final where they could then, if allowed, to partner up more than once, or for the whole thing with someone, to have someone in mind who they trust and have been working with. And I feel like Michaela could have been that for him, and that could have been an amazing partnership that benefited both of them greatly in this game, and they could have hit it really well, the whole thing. And I think she just missed a slight opportunity there, I think, but I totally understand why you would, and why it would just be you know what, the best thing to do walking into this house once they came in is to say no and hold that line and never go back on it. Totally makes sense, but it does seem like she missed out on a possible alliance that could have been, but it's not there now, that's for sure. And we head to the daily challenge. At the daily challenge, another fantastic game. They're crushing it. Production is crushing it with the games this season. I loved everything about it. Fun, physical visuals of, knocking each other over, a slight endurance run with heavy things type of test, a big word puzzle at the end that the group has to do together. It's a great mix. It's fantastic. It looks pretty fun. It looks cool. I would enjoy doing it. It has all the elements. Another really, really good daily challenge. They've had almost all really good to great daily challenges all season long. Blue dominates, as to be expected. That's just kind of what we thought. I predicted that coming into the episode. I don't think I was the only one predicting that. I think almost everyone was predicting that, including almost everyone in the house. Their team is absolutely just stacked. And yes, the big word puzzle at the end, you're like, okay, let's see if they can do, they got some people I would trust to do this if this was like an individual thing. But working together was a different beast, and they did so incredibly, incredibly well. So they dominate. After they win, very funny small moment. I'm always looking for the little small moments to tell us a little bit about the relationships in the house or anything like that, or just interesting or fun. And right when they win the celebration, Bananas jumps on Fessy, who kind of lifts him up for a second or two, but then drops him and runs over and picks up Tori. And Tori and Fessy kind of celebrate together amongst the whole blue team celebrating together. And it just caught me as a very interesting moment that illuminates just kind of where all of the vet relationships are, regardless of everything that has happened behind them. That the combination that Fessy first picks up Bananas and then is picking up Tori after everything those three people have had between each other. You throw Wes into that as well, and those four, all the different machinations of all of their relationships at different point in the game, and that they're celebrating the way they are together, that they have no problem that, Fessy and Tori in the ball together to start, and then him dropping Bananas to pick her up and celebrate at the end after, she has at one point in the past called him a walking mistake in plain sight and whatnot, so it just kind of illuminates that somehow, some way, every vet for the last few seasons has been warped into just, they're all the Vacation Alliance at this point. The Vacation Alliance is expanded to basically just be the vets on any given season that just ride together no matter what. And by the sequences of the seasons and who's on them, they've all come, the fact that Tori and Bananas are like as ride or die as anyone on this season is, you would have never thought that was something that would come to be. You would never have thought that Fessy would be celebrating with both of them, picking her up, that Wes would be a part of it, anything like that. So it was just a very illuminating little moment. And it was just a kind of an interesting, I found it funny when Fessy just kind of dropped Bananas, who was trying to, be the star of the celebration and everything else. So great daily challenge, expected winner. And then we head to the house for nominations. Now, when we get to the house, it is pretty interesting that the first thing we see happening, and does seem to be like the first thing that happens the moment they get back in, is Josh goes to Fessy and he's like, hey, we got to kind of run this here. Like, I know your team won, but I'm calling the shots a little bit. And it does legit seem like Josh is not only, he's kind of leading the vets, he's kind of leading the Big Brother Alliance. Like, he's kind of leading 2/3 of the house at this point, or at least his word matters to 2/3 of the house, whether they will ultimately always listen to it or anything. It matters to a lot of them. And it's impressive. We're going to talk more about Josh a little bit later, but in this moment, I'm at least like, damn, like he's got a great position here for a minute at least. And like, everyone's kind of listening to him and Fessy are like, yeah, we kind of need to do the, like, let's get two Survivor girls versus each other. That would be the best thing for our game. Keep men's names out of it, so Josh doesn't have any chance of ending up in, and get one of the strong women from the people not working with them, the third of the house not working with them. It's a good strategy, and then they kind of pull it off. But as good of a situation as Josh is in, Fessy and Corey are in an amazing situation. Let's talk about that real quick, because in this moment, we see Josh and Fessy talk, and then we see the whole Big Brother crew get together, plus Corey. Corey's just in the Big Brother Alliance right now. That's just, I guess, is a thing that has happened. He's in the meeting. It's funny when he's kind of just right there and like, oh yeah, Big Brother plus Corey. Okay, got it. Corey's Big Brother, honoree. Got it. And Corey and Fessy have slowly but surely through the season put themselves in just unbelievably fantastic positions. Both of them are on the little Big Brother Alliance. Again, Corey included. He's in the meeting with them. They're both in with the vets. They've kind of made nicer with the vets again, especially with, Fessy even over Corey in the best possible position, because he at this point in time when this conversation is happening is on a team with Bananas and Tori, so it actually makes him safe, versus Corey, who's kind of still like on shaky but decent ground with the vets. They're both shown chatting with Michelle in secret later during the little segment where they show Michelle kind of sneaking around having deals with everyone, and neither of them are seen as a leader of anything, but they're kind of seen as basically a part of everyone's plans. I mean, they've got one Survivor person in Michelle, they've got the Big Brother, they've got the vets, and they don't seem to be high on the target list then, because they're that in between of, the Survivor folks targeting either a vet, but targeting a Wes and Bananas over a Corey and Fessel, or a Big Brother person where they're like maybe a Josh, maybe a Monty or whatever over those two. So they're in an incredible position. Just had to give them a shout out for playing the very veteran savvy CT style, Darrell style, sit in the back, kind of be friends with anyone, don't lead any alliance type of game. Love it for both of them. Tyler takes one for the team, which is an interesting strategy, but I think I ultimately agree with it, because I think he did the right thing in reading the room of like, if I go against this thing they're telling me, which they want to nominate me as the guy, so that, and then convince everyone like every person should put in a female's name, and Tyler, you'll be good, like it'll be fine. He's okay with it, because I think he knows the reverse, if he's not okay with it, is, well, you're probably going to maybe be the male pick anyways. And then you might just end up with some people who are happy to throw some votes on men and end up with you in there versus Monty or Josh or something. And so I think he's got to go with it. I don't know that he has much of a choice, but it's still a brave and an interest. It's still a choice that he makes to be so willing to go along with, yeah, you can put my name up. I get it. That's fine. let's make everyone vote for a woman after you put my name up, but it's okay. We get to the nominations, and it's an easy vote. Once Bananas, Wes, and Tori know that Fessel is on the same plan as them, at least for this vote, it's easy. There's nothing Cassidy and Desi can do about it at all. There's a stray vote here or there, but for the most part, it's Tyler and it's Michaela, and it's all about the plan at that point to get Michaela out, to get Michaela in there versus Chanel, if possible, or Desi, I think, but I think the real main target is Chanel. And we then have a little more time at the house and the club before we get to the secret vote. And in that time at the house, Michaela sees her name gets put up, and she goes straight at Josh. Straight at Josh. What an incredible read. Super impressive by her. Love that she calls him out. He's not on the team that put her in, but he knows the conversations that are being had. He knows who's pulling strings, who's making decisions, and she has him red-handed, and there's nothing really he can say back to her. And love the moment of her just being like kind of reading it to him and, giving him the business a little bit of like, I know you were just as much a part of it as the people that went in there and actually voted, and I don't like it, and kind of F you. Love that from her. Then we get Michelle walking in as Desi and Chanel are sitting wondering why Michelle never gets any votes and is always safe, starting to be exposed a little bit, or they're starting to realize that maybe Michelle is playing with more than just the Secret Garden Alliance, which, hint, hint, she is. We get the little montage of it. And this alliance was always too big. It was always too big. They couldn't all make it to the end. We said that right at the beginning when it first formed. There were 7 women in an alliance. Only 5 make it to the final on a typical season. Maybe the season's different. Maybe it's less. Maybe it's more. I don't know. But at some point, you got to kind of, when you're setting up your alliance, you've got to know, you've got to have it in the back of your head that, hey, I made an alliance and it has more people in it than can make the final, which means at some point we are going to have to choose who's at the bottom of this, or who's kind of in the sub alliance within this alliance, and or who has some extra alliances outside of the main one for when the time comes to have to do something about this numbers that don't match up. Michelle, being the more veteran, showing that she has a little more of that veteran savvy in this game, is the one who has that. She's made the deals outside the group for when things turn. And while they don't confront her in this moment, I'm thinking that it's got to be coming next week, not just because they showed us this as a little bit of a setup for it, but they show us this, and then they make a point to show us or have Michelle do the confessional where she does not get any votes eventually when they show that at the arena. And so I think between the fact that they were already onto it a little bit, and then they're like, wait a minute, they tried to get Survivor women versus each other, but somehow Tiffany got some votes instead of Michelle. Like Michelle's name wasn't up there again. That plus now that it's individual, and they will be a little more leaning on other ties outside of their teams and everything else. I think this is going to come to a head maybe next episode, within the next 2 for sure. And but I love it for Michelle currently because I love Michelle so much. So you keep doing you. We then go to the club. Bananas, Wes, they play producers in the field. They're like, how have we not had any romance, any sex, anything on this season? We've got to change that. We'll be the fun uncles, as they're referred to a couple times during the club scene, and we'll make this happen. And it's a little over the top. It's a little contrived, but it is fun. It's a good time. And I'm glad we're just at the club in general. And I'm glad we finally get someone to make out on this season. That's great. And even better, because we know off the show, they are still dating Tyler and Alyssa. Shout out to them. Hope it works out. Hope they're both having the best time. Super duper happy. That's amazing. And yeah, so it's a fun scene. Them convincing Alyssa, then going to Tyler, him being all embarrassed about it, being, you could tell in his head, he's like, well, yeah, I've been trying to make out with Alyssa. I've been trying to make a move on Alyssa. I think things are going really well, but now you've stuck the camera in my face and told me that you told her to make out with me. And so now it has to happen less organically. Like, what the hell? I can see why he's kind of like a little bit like, well, yeah, like I want to do this, but this wasn't exactly how I thought of doing it necessarily. But they end up making out. They end up sealing the deal in the bed later that night, until at least Monty just comes in and appropriately is like, hey, there are 4 beds in here. Like, I'm trying to go to bed. It was nice of Monty and any other roommates left in that room to give them some space for a little bit, as it seemed they did. But then, he comes in. It's like, okay, we got to go to bed now. We got to go to bed. And we've got to go off to the arena. At the arena, Tiffany gets the short end of the hopper stick this time around. Those 2 votes, one of the 2 comes back to cost her. And I just got to say, this game, I would have loved to watch Josh play this game. I don't think it would have went great for him. And it would have been, there could have been some comedy, I think, if Josh ends up in there versus Tyler. Could have been, but we get comedy from Josh anyways, because he, of course, Tiffany rightfully calls out something that I've jokingly referenced the last couple podcasts, that my joke has been, this isn't Survivor. They'll find a way to make it a guy's elimination, because this isn't like Survivor, where it seems like more often than not, a lot of women go home before any men go home, which I'm saying a little bit facetiously, but also that really is a thing that does seem to happen. Make of it what you will, but it does. And it's definitely happening on this season. And the producers haven't ever stepped in and said, no, this week has to be a guy's week. They've only once said it has to be a double elim. One of each has to go home. But otherwise, there have been a lot more women going home than men. And Tiffany rightfully calls them all out of why do all of the men in the house, are they so concerned about getting less women? Like, eventually one man and one woman is going to win this thing, and you're not taking out any of your competitors, and taking us out doesn't matter. And she doesn't say it, but she could also say, and also you're just taking out all the weakest women. So is this just everyone trying to help Tori and Desi win? Is that the whole goal of the entire house, to make this as easy as possible on Tori and Desi? Because that's happening thus far. But of course, Josh, it's directed at everyone. It's probably, if anyone directed least at, probably is least at Josh. Maybe, although he's the one that kind of pulled off this in the moment, making it the girls. And I think him reacting is because of Michaela earlier calling out that this was, his plan. He can't help himself. He talks up, he has to talk back, and Tiffany just lets him have it. It's fantastic. We knew this moment was coming, not the context of it, but this moment was in the trailer. Of the come down and play then moment was in the trailer. But man, yeah, not a great look for Josh. He's been having an awesome season. He's in a great place politically in this game, but he might be stepping on his own toes, as sometimes happens with him here in moments like this, where it's just let her say her piece. She's right. And she didn't say it about you. She said it about everyone. Just don't respond. You don't have to. No one else did. You might notice no one else did. And you might notice they did it for a reason. So that was a funny moment, bad moment for Josh. Great moment for Tiffany before she has a pretty unfortunate moments that follow. Michaela's attitude through the whole time is fantastic. Anyway, who are we playing, TJ? I can do a lot without a partner. Her confidence was just in the perfect sweet spot of confident but not cocky, and just really fun, and loved rooting for her. The game is awesome. I want to play it. The rain made it even more fun. Unfortunately, this was not the best game for Tiffany. And so it wasn't that interesting from a competitive standpoint, but the game itself, another one, amazing. I would have so much fun. This game looks so much fun to play. Again, make the theme park already. Buena Murray, let's go. CBS, now that you've got your hands on challenge stuff, Survivor stuff, challenge stuff, the whole thing, make a theme park. Let me and my friends come play. This would be one of the first games I would run to. This looks so much fun. Michaela smokes it. I believe she actually did as well as we see. This is always one where it's it could be edited. We could find out actually it took her 2 hours to make those 10 shots, or we could find out, yeah, they showed you 12 total shots and she went 10 out of 12. I think it's much closer to that. I think she really did sink shot after shot after shot, and it was incredibly impressive. But it always could be edited either way. Regardless, it was dominating. Even if somehow it wasn't as dominating as they made it look, it was dominating. It was not a great performance from Tiffany. She goes home, which is a bummer. She's been amazing in the confessionals, and she kind of lived up to everything I expected coming into the season, where we had questions of, she's amazing with words. We love to hear Tiffany talk in any context: confessional, podcast off of the show, interviews, talking shit, or talking heart to hearts in the house, anything at all. Amazing. She's amazing. It makes sense why, even as someone who didn't watch Big Brother, that she would be voted the favorite person on Big Brother, because she's fantastic. I just didn't know if she was going to be fantastic at the challenge part of the challenges, the game, the competitive part, or the social part, politics part. She can do all that very, very well to great, but the games were really, letting her down, and lets her down here. We say goodbye to her. She still put up a strong case and made it just far enough. She's still going to be in the running for the Dan Renzi Award at the end of the season. We will see if she can hold on to that or if someone else can come up and grab that. But then Michaela does not get to make her decision. No more teams. As predicted, as expected, it's now an individual game, but maybe not always individual challenges. That's the only thing, the most interesting thing to put out. The wording matter every time TJ does this type of stuff. And he does say, he says no more teams, and there's pause. And then he says, I'll see you at your next daily challenge, which will be individuals. And the way he frames it as the next daily challenge will be individuals, I do believe it is now purely an individual game, but that there's a good chance one of the last couple daily challenges is either a team thing again or pairs in some way or a mixture of both. But the next one is a purely individual daily challenge. We knew this was going to happen. We knew they couldn't go teams until the end, even if I think they should. It's why the switching teams, while it can be fun and can lead to interesting moments, it also almost always is going to create this situation where you get a super team and then it's hard to keep teams for the whole game. Because if they just kept teams right now, it's hard to think that Blue would lose. I mean, they have Wes, Bananas, Fessy, Tori, Cassidy, and Desi. That team's fucking loaded versus the other teams in the house, but versus like any teams. You could bring in a lot of teams from across the challenge universe and the cross challenge history, and this team would smoke almost all of them. It's so good. And that's why the bad part of switching teams, it does lead to like, you can't have this format very long or you end up in this situation. And now we got to go individual, and that's all fine. That was the plan all along. I just, always am longing for the simple game. And so don't love it, but I think this has been a great season with the format so far. And I think I've gotten used to now, 7, 8, 9 seasons into the convoluted formats. I think I'm used to it. I think I'm okay with it now at this point. And I'm ready to see these people play as individuals. If anyone benefits from this, it's kind of hard to say who benefits, who doesn't. If anything, I think Wes, Bananas, and Tori do not. They're hurt by this, by not being on this super team now. They can just win and be safe. And now instead they have to win individually, which they certainly can do, but not all of them. And that the rest of the house can get back to like working together to target them. I think if it benefits anyone, I would say Fessy, Corey, Michelle, and Michaela, because they all kind of have in that middle, maybe Desi as well, have both the threat factor, the like, you don't want to end up against me. So if you vote me in, like you could end up against me factor, but also I'm kind of playing the middle. I've got a lot of friends in a lot of places factor. I'm not the top pick factor. Like before you go for Fessy or Corey, you'd go for Wes and Bananas. Before you go for Michelle and Michaela, you'd probably go for Desi. You'd probably go for Tori. And so I think if it benefits anyone, them, but really it just makes it a more wide open game. And I think it hurts the vets that were on the blue team more than anything else. Now to the awards. Best quote of the episode. There was only one nominee. There was one winner. Wes, quote, "We will do everything in our power to make it a girl day as long as you make it a girl night," end quote. That was definitely the funniest part of the entire funny producers. Let's make these two make out montage and moment that we got at the club. As speaking of moments, best moment of the episode, nominee number 1, Michaela calling out Josh the first time around. Second, the club Funkle romance scene, everything that we just talked about 2 times over. Third, Tiffany shouting Josh down, just shutting Josh down. Love that. Josh is on the receiving end of 2 of the best moments of the episode, getting told, kind of put in his place a little bit. And then the fourth and final one, Michaela's shooting performance looked great. Form looked awesome. She said she wasn't, a ball player, but she sure looked like one up there. Of those 4, I'm giving it to Tiffany. On her way out, she gets a little hardware to go with it. Tiffany shutting Josh down, and just her entire little monologue, followed by letting Josh know that it wasn't about him, and it's not always about him, even if he wants to make it that way sometimes. Loved that. MVP of the episode. We got Josh in 5th. We got Tyler in 4th. We got Alyssa in 3rd. We got Tiffany in 2nd. We got Michaela in 1st. This episode was definitely, it was the episode where we get Tyler and Alyssa, the payoff of that. We get Josh, being the little bit mastermind, but being called out for it and yelling in the wrong situations as usual for it. So they make the list. But this episode was about Tiffany and Michaela. We got the backstories from both. It was pretty clear at some point, as it usually is, these 2 women are likely going into elimination. And I liked everything we got from both of them. Big time win for Michaela. And she becomes the MVP of the episode. Then we've got our power rankings and our predictions and a little Wes chat to end the pod here. Female power rankings do not change. Desi, Tori, Michaela, top 3. One of those 3 women is winning this season. If anything, this episode, I think Michaela closed that gap for me of just like right on par, like any of those 3. I wouldn't have said it was quite even odds between them before. And now I think Michaela could end up, maybe any of them could end up in an elimination a bunch the rest of the way out. Those 3 are the threats, period, end of story. And then Cassidy and Chanel round out that top 5 for me. They got a shot, but they need to get at least 1, if not 2 of those women out first before the final to have a real shot in the final. Men's side, I still up in the air. I've still got Bananas, Wes, Fessel as my top 3. And then I've got Corey 4, and I'm sliding Josh out and Chris in. I think Chris has a shot here. I think almost anyone on the men's side has a shot, not named Monty and Tyler. I don't think either of them have any shot at winning the final in any way. But I still think this is Bananas, Wes, Fessel, Corey. Like, it's a vets to lose, and I'm just throwing Fessy in with that group. I know Corey, Wes, and Bananas are the 3 technical vets, quote unquote, on the season, but I think it's one of theirs to win or to lose. And I think while I have Wes in second here, because I think he's going to get targeted maybe a little bit more, we'll see. I think Bananas and Wes are both going to become the new targets again, now that they can be more easily targeted, not on a team that can win every time. But if Wes makes the final, the same reason I picked him as my winner pick coming into the season, if he makes the final, he will win it versus anyone else in this house. I feel very confident in that, and he's getting close to making it. So they don't have a lot of time left to get him out. As for predictions, 2 for 4 last week, and I can't believe I didn't go 4 for 4. I said they would change the format. I said Blue would cruise to the daily win, but then I said that a male would be eliminated, and that male would be Tyler. And I'm stunned that it is not a male. Next week, one of my 3 predictions is it will be a men's elimination. I don't know if they will just go straight up and say this is a men's elimination week, the format is different now, or not, or they will just make sure that it is, or everyone in the house will just decide that it should be and vote for men. I don't know, but the numbers are getting very lopsided here. So they need to send some men home some way, somehow. We can't do a final with like 3 women and 9 men. I guess you can. It would be weird, and I think some people would be upset about it, and I think all of those people, I would probably be included in it, and would be correct at being upset about it, as Tiffany was in this episode. So can't believe I got that wrong, but 2 for 4, not horrible. Next week, guys elimination, saying that Wes and Desi win the first individual daily. It looks like the daily next week is taking place in the ocean water, in that cavern, the one from Spies, Lies, and Allies, where Tommy got a concussion and finished the whole thing with a concussion, with his pants off, before being medically evicted from the game. So there's going to be some swimming involved, open water swimming at that. Give me Wes anytime. Desi, take her as well. They'll win the first daily. Guys elimination. Monty goes home. Those are the 3 predictions for next week. Now, before we go, really quickly, as I said at the beginning, we'll quickly talk about, because it's been the biggest news of the week in the challenge world. At Challenge Mania yesterday, it came up a bunch. We did a big chant and video for Wes, telling him we all loved him, that Scott sent off to Wes, and Wes reposted on Instagram and everything. Wes came under fire this week after last week's episode, and all the tears and everything else. There were some people that thought it was a little much, some people that thought it was a little fake, this, that, and the other, and some people that just don't like Wes and just decided to take an opportunity to talk some shit. Chief among them, the main one, it started with Rachel Robinson, took a shot at him, saying she was there when was it? Yeah, it was Rachel Robinson. I hope I'm not getting all this wrong, but it was Rachel Robinson. And then Laurel replied to that. Rachel remembered when Wes poured the Coca-Cola on Cara Maria, which was not cool, pretty not cool. And then Laurel chimed in that she was there, and they both kind of were like, he's kind of a piece of dirt. And Laurel especially, had some comments about him being a piece of crap, and more or less calling out that all of his business and all that stuff is fake, and saying, no wonder you had to buy your fake big house in Kansas City where, real estate costs $1 or whatever, which get up on the real estate markets first and foremost. And Kansas City's cool and is a full-blown city. And Wes does have a mansion. Anyways. And so then a bunch of people came to Wes's defense, and from Shane here, a Sylvia there, a bunch of others came out and like, Wes is amazing, like how could people say any of this stuff about Wes? And it just turned into this whole like, is Wes awesome or not thing all week long. And my piece of it, there was a couple things that I had big reactions to. The first one is that everyone on the show, and this was one thing that Shane said, and I thought was like kind of the most in his defense of Wes, was, a defense of not so much even of Wes, of just people having been on the show and done stupid things. And was that most of the people who have done the show for a long time have plenty of bad moments. As much as everyone has a highlight reel, lots of them have a low light reel. And usually, more often than not, thankfully, we can say that a lot of the people that have both a low light and a highlight reel, the low lights come earlier, and then they do seem to grow up a little bit or to mature in some ways. Not everyone. We've had others that have not, certainly, but we've had some like a Wes that definitely, definitively, I think has in a massive way. And that, yes, you can go back when he started 20 years ago when he was 19, and you could say moments like pouring soda on Cara Maria, which was not cool. It was horrible. It was a horrible thing to do, but made sense kind of that like something like that would happen on this show where they're escalating. They're kind of purposely fighting. They know to be antagonistic and everything like that. It's competitive. It's this crazy environment. And then someone in that split-second decision decides to escalate the next level and does something really stupid, like pouring soda on someone's head. And suddenly now, by 30 seconds later, we have two different people in that house, two different women, bawling, having went through and relived or had traumatic things brought up, with Paula and Cara both in that instance having horrible things yelled at them, done to them, said to them in those moments. One of the people that said all of the things to Paula in that moment was the one bringing up this stuff about Wes, or was one of the people that said things in that moment. But and then suddenly it's like, fuck, everyone went too far, and the instigating moment was Wes. And I'm sure nowadays, today, he doesn't feel great about it. And it's so hard for us as fans to judge all of that stuff, to know, we're entertained by it up to a certain point, that line that I always refer to. And then they go over it and like, oh, fuck, they went over it again. Damn it. I can't believe that. And now I don't know what to think, because now I keep watching this person who I like and I'm entertained by, but they did that stupid thing. And now 5 years later, 10 years later, in this case, like 15 almost years later, like 12 years later, and like 12 plus seasons later of evidence and all we know from social media of people's real lives, it's like, have they changed? Have they not? How do I root for that? How do I think about that? It's all this crazy gray area that we live in. And I loved Shane's response of like, this is the show, not necessarily that moment, that incident, but like the show was built on these people not treating each other great. And it was a different vibe. And it isn't saying it's all good. It's certainly not, but that people do grow up, and people on this show actually did learn to be better people. And that Wes was one he thought had, and he had a nice story about a time Wes really stood up for him in a big way off camera and everything else. And so, yeah, I just think it's, I like that people can get better, grow up, mature on this show. It's one of the fascinating things about having watched someone like Wes do it for 20 years and really see them go from a 19-year-old like punk kid, who I still admit, because I'm 3 or 4 years younger than him and loved his season. Austin, was in my little triumvirate of real world seasons that I loved. I looked up to Wes and Danny on Austin. I was like, I want to be just like them. Johanna's like my dream woman as a 16-year-old watching them as 20-year-olds or whatever. And, all of it, and being like, he's kind of being a piece of shit, but like, I'm capable of that too. And then over the years being like, wow, that's cool that he doesn't seem to be a piece of shit ever anymore. It's just more and more often than not becoming the cooler version, the better version. And then the layer on top of all of that is Wes specific to, as he alluded to tweeting during the episode last week about, it's as much as it is like he's going to need to be a father now, and was already abundantly busy with all of his businesses and everything else. It is also that he's just tired of the talk behind his back and the people not taking him seriously and talking shit about things that are real in real life. And a bit of this is in some way Wes's fault because he has over the last like 5 to 10 seasons he's done this kind of like the newer, more older, mature version of Wes still leans into and does the very like winking at you, like, I'm the most handsome guy here, or like, I'm so much more successful and I have money and I don't need in this, that. And he does it in a way that's very clearly like, I'm winking at you. This is funny. I'm doing this role now and kind of leaning into it. But at the same, and because of that, it's made it easier for other people to be like, it's all bullshit and everything Wes says is bullshit and this, that, and the other. When in fact, if you follow him in real life and also, you know, I'm in the entrepreneurial world myself and just, he's legit. He's like way more legit than he even actually gives him credit for on the show. He's done some really impressive, incredible things. He has built an unbelievable life. He's incredibly successful, and all that stuff's real. And it probably does get really tiring to have everyone tell him that it's not real and that it's silly and stupid. And yeah, he's probably very much over it. And so when Laurel calls him out on it and tries to make fun of his house because it's in Kansas City and that's why it doesn't matter, it's not real. And he, you know, responds with his very petty, but I did get a laugh out of it, you know, stories of, look at me in my mansion that costs nothing because I live in Kansas City and it costs so little that I have a private chef here to serve this event and my family and all that. And it's like, yeah, if someone got mad at that, I would get it. I was actually explaining the whole thing to my wife and she was like, it sounds like pretty fucking petty from Wes to put that out there. I'm like, yeah, it was, but you know what? It was deserved in that moment. And I got into entertainment out of it. And he is always an entertainer first with all of this stuff, or certainly tries to be. And so that's a bunch of mishmash thoughts and opinions on the whole cycle, which the final one is, without naming the specifics, it was, I love Laurel. I adore Laurel. I think she's one of my in the top tier of people that I have enjoyed on this show and am fascinated by, and just their character arc on the show and everything else, and is obviously incredible at the show itself and the game itself. But like, you've had those moments too. Like, you've had, not everyone, almost everyone that's done the show for a long time has had, you know, some bad moments, those lowlights we mentioned. But not everyone has had a, you know, Wes pouring soda on Cara Maria level of moment where it's like, man, that was really shitty, dude. Like, that was really shitty. But like Laurel has. And so that was the other part about it that I was just like, yeah, I don't, you know, I'm glad, I don't know. I'm sure plenty of people did because it's social media. I didn't really see anyone come back with like, well, what about when you did X? Like, I'm glad it didn't just turn into that because that isn't productive or helpful or good or anything like that. But I did think of it. I was like, well, come on now. Like, do you want us to think that like people are capable of change? Because I would think you would want to, and I think you have, and I think you're an awesome person these days. And I think you've had some moments in the past where if you only saw that moment, someone would be like, well, she sucks. And I would be like, well, she had a bad moment, you know, but like, she's awesome. And Laurel's fucking amazing. So yeah, it was interesting who was saying it. It was interesting how big of a thing it came in all the challenge community. And now I've been talking about it for, I don't even know, 10 plus minutes here. So let's end the pod there. Thank you as always for being here. We'll be back Thursday night with episode 8. As always, DM me on Instagram at Challenge Historian if you want to talk anything challenge related. If you got ideas for future content, anything else, hit that follow, subscribe, all the good things. It helps so much. I appreciate and love every single one of you. Thank you. Talk to you next week. Peace.